Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another eventful podcast from News from the Real World. I'm Jeremy. I am a third-year technical direction grad.
I'm Allie. I'm a third-year SMPM grad.
And I'm Damien. I'm a third-year costume design grad.
And we just go through 10 different articles that we find of either interest or that the populace here at the school thought was important to talk about this week. And starting off, we have an article from the Tartan, and it is from Life at CMU report, finds that campus is indeed stressed out. This is by David Coggan. And yes, we're stressed. And they pretty much, in the article, they pretty much say that we're stressed. We know we're stressed, but we're not any more stressed than our average other schools that we compare ourselves with. And that's not great, but we should still work on it. We're going to do some more research and create some more seminars and sessions. And in my mind, I don't know what that does to reduce the stress culture that we are living in and creating for ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the main focuses, too, about the article in the study was just an emphasis on handling mental health on campus. And I feel like that's probably the biggest payoff from doing this study is that they are aware that, obviously not just here, but across campuses in general, that there does come a certain point in your time here. And I think this one specifically was focusing on undergrads, right? If I remember correctly?
Yes.
And just like, tracking the development of major depressive symptoms, and not necessarily like actually, validating diagnoses, and I think the study revealed just the fact that, like you said, we're kind of on par with a lot of campuses, but that doesn't mean that just because because it's the same doesn't mean that they're not going to take any action. And I think this is just kind of the start of possibly kind of zeroing in and focusing on how to provide the resources, which, props to CMU.
It definitely felt like something that is great for us to learn about as students, but like honestly felt like a report that the higher ups and like the people who run colleges and like the faculty and everything felt like stuff that they need to see.
And that's what, they're saying, looking at the mental health situation of cognitively imbalanced students is more complicated. However, as the project team found that life satisfaction scores returned with fairly high scores in comparison with other colleges' scores. Right. So at least with all the stress we're going through, we're still being satisfied or finding satisfaction in what we're doing. Yeah. We're all happy to be here in one way or another, even though we are stressed at times. I
was going to say, I feel like this is also such a big conversation that's been happening within these walls in terms of the School of Drama. And I feel like students are very quickly to jump into pointing at the issues that are at hand without realizing or recognizing that there are changes being made.
Correct.
This article kind of served as a reminder for myself. I think this year, being a part of multiple committees and seeing things from both sides, from the student side as well as the administrative, educational, or professor side, it's like changes are being made, and I feel like people tend to jump to conclusions that there's not enough change being made. It's like, no, a lot of these things take so much time.
Incremental. When I was working at universities and teaching, there's a common thing that they talk about any real change takes 5 to 6 years to actually implement because it has to be new for so long, and everyone that is there when that has changed, it is new. That's why all the third year grads and a bunch of the second year grads still call it AI, not GA,
right?
Because change is incremental. You can never change everything overnight,
right?
And it's hard to have those large sweeping changes.
Exactly.
I did find it interesting that they said that they found that the average sleep time was to be 2:23 a.m. The average wake time of 9:30.
That is so accurate.
Yeah.
I was like, yep. Yeah. Although that wake time is usually a little bit early for me, but that's about my time.
And that's the
pretty
thing,
accurate.
They were like, average of 6-7 hours, something like that. And they're like, oh, that's actually not too bad. Like, no, it's not too bad. But like when you look at the fact that the average go to bed time is 2:30 in the morning, and you're like, great.
That's because that's when they're finding their time to work on those things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially in our world.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But
yeah. So, speaking of, like,
Work.
not jumping, like, understanding that change is incremental and you don't have to, run around with your head cut off about it. So, how to stop operating in crisis management mode from Fast Company.
I do love that the image for this article is a person standing in front of a fire.
Yeah.
I get it.
Seems kind of happy by the fire. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
It feels right.
looks like he set the fire, so I'm actually okay with it.
Shorts.
This is by Evie Wolf. And so this basically just talks about how to avoid, like, creating a crisis when one doesn't need to occur, to be more productive. It's a good article. I was a little thrown off in the beginning where it was like, but if you're a manager, maybe this isn't applying to you. And I'm like, okay. And so the steps that they give, you're waiting until the last minute to do things for no reason, and what to do instead. And each step along the way has the what to do instead part. Number 2 is you're not paying attention when people give you important information. Number 3 is you've taken on too much. Number 4 is you're rushing into your day. And that's it. So it's a good article, but I did have some thoughts contrarily to this because, like, because in my head I was thinking of instances. So, like, rushing into your day, sure. But if I've prioritized getting sleep over, like, waking up and being able to take those extra 15 minutes to not be rushing, but I'm taking that opportunity to sleep because the night before rehearsal went late, and rehearsal went late because the director needed to talk about something for 15, you know what I mean? Like, you're prioritizing other things, but then that can throw off some of the things that they're suggesting. I also felt like while this was helpful, it might have been more helpful to have when stuff is seemingly in crisis, how do you diffuse that, and how do you make it so that you are not affected by
how do you placate other people's overreaction to situations?
Well, even just the situation itself, like deflate a crisis. You know what I mean? Like, you can't avoid, because they're talking about, like,
de-escalation tactics,
right? Like, all of these things to avoid crises, and I'm just like, well, yes, but you're not going to be able to do it all the time.
I feel like the article focused on a very specific type of crisis, and when I read it, I think the biggest thing that resonated with me is that it's an article kind of highlighting that there is a level of self-accountability that you have to kind of, take into consideration, and this has actually been a very it's been an ongoing conversation in my department in terms of certain things that have been happening recently, but like you were saying, there are times where it's out of your control and it's in the hands of somebody else, and it doesn't really touch on that. But I think this is more on, like, before you jump into the bigger picture of things that are out of your control, it's kind of taking a moment to reflect on yourself and being able to recognize that, like, oh, yeah, maybe I should get up a little earlier. And it's funny because I was actually just having this conversation with my roommate, like, 2 nights ago about how I needed to start getting up earlier because I waste so much of my morning just not doing anything. And I have mornings to do stuff, but I haven't been. And so I'm going to try to be a little bit better about that. But then it goes into, well, what if I'm at the school until, like, 12?
This is my thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
So it's like, but I also feel like we're kind of applying it to ourselves in the current circumstances of, we're in grad school, we have deadlines, versus in the real world.
Well, I did really like what it was. It was like point 3 of, don't overcommit yourself.
Yeah.
That I felt was the most appropriate.
Don't take on more than you can do.
I just don't have time.
And coming off of just project managing, it's like that is a large portion of it is not overcommitting your resources, and your resources are the people in the office. So as far as looking at these from a manager standpoint, it's like you have to protect, and I was just talking with stuff about summer with some people, and it's just as important for you to be able to protect yourself from being overcommitted as it is protecting other people that you can, basically, that you have control over their workload.
Right.
It's important to make sure that you're not putting too much on yourself and that you're not putting too much on them.
Right.
So it's finding that balance and finding that the way to say no and not just start with the yes.
Right.
Like, you always, in my side of the industry, TDs are tended to look off as always, saying no. it's finding, leading with the yes or trying to find the way to say yes on things. Yeah. Try not to say any of Holcomb's titles on.
I was going to say, if you're interested in more about that, there's a book called Power of the Positive No. Go look for it. Anyway, so
Mitch
good article.
Today.
What?
Mitch bought that book today.
Oh dear Lord. So anyway.
So moving on to an article that kind of departs from this sort of well, no, this is actually a good thing about accountability. So it's an article titled, it was in Polestar, titled Andy Grammer's Open Letter to the Males of the Touring World, and it was a letter by Andy Grammer. So this, essentially Andy Grammer who is a pop star or pop performer, is on tour currently, and he's mentioned about how he has been in the bottom of the totem pole as like an opener to then occasionally being a headliner. But one of the things that he decided to do, and has kind of put this letter out there as a letter of suggestion for any other companies that are currently on tour, is he essentially got all of the women that are on his tour. He kind of brought them in together, and for the first time in the 8 years that he's been touring, he literally just had them sit down, and there are 5 women he mentions that were touring with him, and he just simply put it out there: is there anything that we can do to make this tour better for you? Because it is a group of 5 women and a mostly male tour.
Give them a more powerful
Exactly. And they kind of exchanged a couple of things, and he was just surprised, because I think what ultimately happened is the women said that they've never been asked anything like this, and how, and he kind of like, it touched him in a way that just like, he felt the need to write this letter to kind of any other males who are touring that are in the industry, like take some time to actually get some of the feedback, because there are things that like, I think the one thing that kind of shocked him was that like, something as simple as putting lids on trash cans for, where feminine products are disposed. And it's like, he's like, that's not something that would have ever crossed my mind if I had not had this conversation. Because it's like, it's not that he's like, holding off. It's just, it's something that he would never think about.
It's not something
exactly.
that we don't daily encounter.
Exactly.
So we don't daily think about it.
You don't think about it until you have to like experience it, and then you're like, oh yeah, no, this sucks.
But yeah, he says, he didn't want this letter to be kind of like a congratulatory, look at this cool thing that I did. It's more of like a, hey, think about everyone that's on your tour.
Everyone should do this too.
Yeah. And so, it was a great, it's a good article, and he's pretty much said, like, I'm not saying that I'm the first one to do something like this, but this is just a reminder that, and what he said, that the 5 women that are on his tour, like, they've been touring for years, like longer than he has. Like, they're, he's what they're what he considers veterans. So it's like, it's sad that this is the first time they're hearing these questions, but like, good for him for taking the time to kind of sit down and have these conversations. So
that's awesome.
No, we need to continue to open up that conversation, and when we have people on our staff, we need to remember that the conversation always won't start itself. That there needs to be people there to start that conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's when it's the person with the power who's doing it, that's always it's always a good sign.
And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about, I think, last week, where it was like, if you're going to be inclusive, then you have to, like, which we should, you should then have the support in place to actually be inclusive, and like not just
exactly.
Yeah.
Looking out for the little guys.
Right. Well, speaking of the little guys, you can
set that up for you.
Yep. Miss in the Biz has an article of #PayUpHollywood: Why You Should Be Fed Up with Low Assistant Pay. It's by Elise Christ, and this is one person's experience of their time going through and working long times, not getting paid necessarily what they're worth for a long period of time. Not just like I'm going to do this one thing this one summer and get my foot in the door and then I'll move up. It was for multiple years, and this is continuing on the whole #PayUp that has been going out recently. There are several very important things I think are brought up in this article of talking about the education wall, where industry leaders strongly prefer this, or having a master's or a college or a high college degree for those small introductory positions. And then at that point, it's like, okay, wait, why did I get my degree? How am I using this on a daily basis?
Right.
And it's the abusiveness of internships that are paid or unpaid, not actually being what internships are supposed to be. Which I'm glad there's some laws that have come out against that in the past few years. And like I think this is the most important thing I think in this entire article was at the end, which is, okay, so what can I do to help section. They outline 3 major things, which is talk to your boss, a trusted coworker or authority. Find your ally in the room. Find those people that have a stronger voice than you or have more quote unquote power in the issue and can take your side and help make the way for you. And the higher ups, so those people need to look for ways that they can be reaching out and helping and bringing people up. And then assistants need to organize and support one another. So this is the group is larger than the single person, and use that collective cohort to your advantage in this. And these are your typical. These are yes, fairly average strategies to deal with issues of this type. But it was nice to see someone that was talking about going through all these things and seeing it in the world, but then actually being able to come up with, okay, these are the solutions, and this is what we can do to start going forward. Because so recently I've been finding a lot of the articles have been like, it's going to sound very crass, but like very woe is me. But everyone's like, we all understand that we've all been through rough times. What can we do to make it better? And instead of focusing and dwelling on the victimhood of oneself in it, say, yes, this happened to me, but going forward, this is what I'm going to do to make sure it doesn't happen to someone else.
Right. Yeah. They pinpointed some very fundamental things that I feel like what you mentioned, the education law, like that is something that I feel like plagues all industries, not even so much this one, just the fact that you prefer someone with a college degree. Why does it have to be someone with a college degree that's getting you coffee? And it's like, that sort of thing. It's like if you spent it says $200,000 on a film degree. Yeah. Like, why is this the person that you need to be?
If you spent $2,000 on a film degree, you shouldn't be getting you are overqualified to go get coffee.
Exactly. And
so hiring for true qualifications, and if they're overqualified, great. I understand wanting to get your foot in the door in industry saturation and some aspects of it, or oversaturation of people, but
yeah, it's just unfair, and I'm hoping that this movement does pick up some steam and we start seeing a bit more. I mean, I feel like we've gotten an article every week for the past 3 weeks about Pay Up Hollywood.
Yes.
So it's gaining some traction, I'm assuming, if this is
and this is only we're only talking about one or two of the articles that are about it, but there are significant multiple ones about this that are coming through.
So keep on fighting.
Yes.
Pretty much.
So on a lighter note, keep on fighting your way to the bathroom? No, I don't know.
That works.
Anyway,
that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, in another aspect of struggle, the bathroom.
The bathrooms. So bathrooms at Hamilton. Can 200 women make it through 16 stalls in a 20-minute intermission? Tune in next week to find on the Philadelphia Inquirer by Ellie Silverman. So this talks about an usher at Hamilton. They interview an usher at Hamilton, whose name is, wait for it. Hold on. Oh, come on.
Tanya Heath.
Thank you.
Yep.
Gotcha.
She looks like a traffic cop in the middle of this crowd too. I love it.
Right, and but like the happiest traffic cop. Like, oh my gosh, she loves this job. So yeah, and it talks about the very real crisis. This should have been right next to the crisis article. About having to use the bathroom, specifically as a woman at Hamilton. It's nuts. And they have it down to a science.
Yeah.
And they direct you to
you are going to this stall.
Absolutely. And there's no hanging around waiting for someone else when you're there type of thing. It's you're in, you're out, it's crazy. When I went
to be fair, it's the way men function a lot in the bathroom. They're in, they're out, they're done.
Okay, are you fighting 15
No,
other
I'm not.
ones? Right.
I'm not.
So, but it's like it's a fun article. They interview her. She talks about like tips that she has when you go see Hamilton, stuff like that. She makes it fun. She like gives updates. Like if the thing has already started, she's like, okay, and this is where you see, you know, like Jefferson walk back on stage, like type of thing.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I went to see it in Chicago, and this was the exact experience. And like those women do not mess around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's fun.
It's just someone who's perfected the craft of how to be kind, but also trying to get the job done.
Yeah.
Also, it's like break legs. Best of luck for her because when she's like talking about auditioning, she wants to be in Hamilton. So I'm hoping her time will come.
Absolutely.
But she's very much a hard worker, and she's very good at what she does.
She's got a spark of life about her, what she does. Like,
it's very
someone who enjoy like. It's not what they love to do.
Yeah.
It's not what like I'm gonna
years.
direct traffic at the bathroom.
Yeah.
But yet she has fully embodied it and embraced it, and you can tell just when she talks about it. Like you're making the best of your world.
Yeah.
Right.
She does a good job.
Yeah.
So shout out to Tanya Heath and the work she's doing God's work.
Right. Truly.
Kind of changing the subject completely. There's no good subject.
There's no good subject.
I don't know.
This one, the article is Colorblind Assessments of Grant Proposals Don't Work, and Here's a Better Idea. It's an article written by Anthony Bug Levine. This article, I mean, just say it, it's pretty dense. In my opinion, it was kind of boring. And it is just a guy's opinion on how to properly assess grants and how to move forward. Because colorblind grant, when it's talking about colorblind assessment, it means how to provide funding for organizations that are led by people of color or that help a specific group of people of color or just other marginalized groups, and how if we approach these as like as in colorblind, as in we're not paying attention to
paying attention, no race, no anything about
how inevitably it still turns out to where those are the least supported grants, right, or at least supported nonprofit organizations. So Anthony just kind of takes a stab at providing options in terms of like better management of how to assess these. He speaks. There's a lot of jargon in here that I was not very familiar with, which is part of the reason why it was so dense for me. Is just like I don't know the ins and outs of how boards work for nonprofit organizations, but he just provided a list of better approaches, of better practices in order to ensure that there is, equity amongst all organizations seeking grants. So that's kind of it's a like I said, a very specific niche sort of skill set that if you're in the field, this would be very beneficial for you. Like if you are in the grant providing or in any sort of philanthropy.
I will have to say, having written a few grants myself, it is a terrifying, painful process. Yeah. That I do not wish grant writing upon anyone of those that do it. Yeah. More power to you, because. So thank you.
At the end of the day, those are the people that are getting money that will pay most of us. So
correct.
So more power to them.
Yeah.
But it's intense. It's an intense process, and kudos for Anthony trying to provide sort of tips, and hopefully they will reach the people that need to hear them.
Right.
That's the hard part, though.
Yeah.
Is who's actually going to listen to this?
Right.
I mean, we hope that people are out there reading these articles.
Well, and he probably, if this is what he does, he probably also shared this in
advocates
circles
for it,
where this, where people are giving grants. You know what I mean? Like,
it's just one of those articles that it feels so niche that unless there are a few of those high people that truly connect with it,
right?
It's gonna be difficult for it to have that impact,
right?
Yeah, hopefully it gains traction, and like you said, like hopefully also heartening, at least to know that someone's talking about it from a perspective of like the people like applying for grants.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
But in another article, on Date Book. This is Lily Janik talking about why you should see theater in languages you don't speak. And I enjoyed this article a lot. It talks about how you can seeing something and not knowing what they're saying, you pick up on so much more. It's essentially like when one sense is dulled, all your others are heightened. Mm-hmm. When you don't know what the words are saying, you're paying so much more attention to the way that they're acting, the inflections, the tone, and the small subtle reactions. Because you're not watching this because this person's talking. You're processing what they're saying, but looking somewhere else. You're focused on where the action is at all times. And it really, I really enjoy this perspective because it talks about, it really drawing you in, and the way it gives a little backstory and communicates things. And just talking about a specific instance when she went to go see the show, and it's okay to miss things. Like that was one of the big points, is that it's okay to miss things, and it's a different, like, I feel we get so wrapped up in this, in creating our art, that we're like, everyone has to see the same show. Everyone's gonna, I want every seat to be able to get the exact same experience. No, that's not gonna happen. And this helps drive it home by saying, it's okay to miss things. It's okay to see something or get something that other people aren't. And to go into the process of seeing the show and embracing that, I think it's, you're like, oh, I'm open to being surprised. I'm open to receiving, because I know general premises maybe, but I'm gonna learn what's going on by observing the situation.
And even if you try and make it so that everyone sees and hears the exact same show, no one is going to see and hear the exact same show, and they're going to interpret it differently.
You're compromising it in my mind. Like you're, in order to try to level everything out in the show, you might be compromising one moment of like, oh, wouldn't it be really cool if they ran up there and did this? Oh, but half the audience isn't going to see that. Well, okay, what if they came down here and did this?
Yeah. I also think that there's so much to be said for the words you might not understand, but people do things in every language, in every culture, that you can understand across the board. You know what I mean?
Because those universal.
Oh my god. Yeah. And I think that's really a beautiful part of it too. Connecting in those moments where it's like, no, this is just humanity. Right. This is,
I mean, I also enjoyed this article. I think one of the things that I question or just wonder is I would love to start seeing, because the writer Lily was very specifically at a Filipino theater festival. Are we ever going to get to the point where we are having productions in other languages happening at a regional theater? Exactly, at a regional theater level. Yeah. When is it going to get to that point? I recently saw a production that had a lot of Spanish that was performed at a regional theater, and like we were saying, there are just universal things that what's happening without knowing exactly what was said.
Exactly.
And lucky for me, yes, I'm bilingual and I could understand what was going on, but hearing laughter coming from hearing words in Spanish, but then hearing laughter coming from the whole theater, it's clearly people know what's going on. So it's I'm just curious to know at what point are we going to see a shift of seeing these sort of cultural productions or just foreign language productions happening in our local theater houses, as opposed to limiting them to specific the Tagalog 2019 festival. I hope
when is it going to stop being specific festivals or specific arts organizations where that is their mission?
Right. When is it going to cross that line? And I think that's kind of, because unfortunately, even with a specific production, I did speak to some people afterward, and I found out that there had been complaints about people had said oh, there was just too much Spanish. There was too much Spanish for me to.
We had people say that about In the Heights when we did In the Heights,
right? And it's
just
there's not much,
right. And so that's unfortunately, that's the world that we live in, and it's always scary for theaters to want to do that because it's like, how is it going to affect us financially?
They're based upon their viewership.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll happen anytime soon, but it would be great, to start seeing some of this crossover, especially, in those communities where the population is there that could be brought into the theater. Right. So, yeah. But overall, a very good read, very interesting. Like you said, it was.
And even if it's theaters choosing what, like, you can get diversity reports based upon your location.
Exactly.
And, if you wanted to, if you can segment, like, if you really want to get in this mindset, you could set aside, okay, this much of our season, we're going to do work that is keyed towards this specific demographic of people. And you could do that via class, you could do that via ethnicity, or you could do that, via whatever you want to divide that. And you, in the end, once you start doing that, you start seeing more diverse audience overall. Yeah, it's not just for that one performance; it's overall increase viewership, and then you start to. That's where you truly develop a sense of community because everyone's coming together to see these things.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff.
So the segue I'm going to do for this one is just going to be no, I was just going to say, like, doing better. Like, because we were just doing better for the community, like, honestly. So minor offenders can substitute jail time for an art class at the Brooklyn Museum. This is on Hyperallergenic by Hakeem Bishara. And I love this. I love this more than I can possibly say.
It's brilliant.
It is talking about how there's a new program in New York City that allows people arrested for minor offenses to avoid jail time or court appearance by enrolling in an art course. And the key mission phrase for me here is it's about holding people accountable, but doing it in ways that promote human dignity. So, yeah, and it's wonderful. I would love to see this happen more. It talks about how they bring people in and they have, like, discussions, and specifically around pieces that are questioning perspectives,
right,
and allowing people to own their own story, and how it gives, like, defining agency and their own narrative versus being defined by others.
And the shifting of the gaze.
Exactly. And it just helps people, like, process how they got to where they are, and actually is part of the rehabilitation process instead of, just locking them up because we created a society that perpetuates this. So, and the justice system is broken. So hopefully this
is also this is in the same vein of the articles that we had last week. Talking about education in the arts and how that has such a positive impact on people. And this is, ideally it happens before there's a situation which calls for, that is looked on in this way in the world. But in place of going and doing jail time, educating that person, it's the rehabilitation that jail is supposed to be.
Absolutely. And this is why they do it in like in prisons, and it gives them a safe space. It's almost like fairy tales. It gives them like a safe space where they can use the text or the art or whatever as a metaphor, and the only possible way of actually interacting with those feelings and those things that might have happened to them that caused this, or like to bring them up to this, right, like their own stories. Like it gives you a mediated way to work through your own story.
There's another article a while back that talked about prison theater and how they were, how to tour a prison show, and a show put on by the inmates that is touring to other prisons because of how well it's connecting, and like it is therapeutic.
Yep.
Well, I think the best thing that I pulled from this was the fact that there are examples of the results. Like the fact that there have been fewer rearrests. There's like that in itself speaks volumes. And I think one of the quotes towards the end of the article is when they spoke to one of the participants of this who'd been arrested for shoplifting. She said, it helped to make me feel human in a system that often criminalizes people for the smallest of things.
Absolutely.
And that in and of itself is enough, I feel like, to support a program like this. Like the fact that you are making someone feel like a human instead of, it's like a form of punishment, but it's not punishment, it's rehabilitation, and being able to kind of have someone view life and art through a different lens. And I think it's truly beautiful. I mean, it's
I love this. I hope that this happens way more. So very good to see.
I was gonna make a joke about paint because you're studying paintings, but this article, I mean, everyone needs tips sometimes. The fact that there is a whole article dedicated to this, I mean, this is just I don't know how this is a trending article, but I mean, this is something that I feel like I probably would have Googled at some point, but now I know how to do it. So the article is How to Strip Paint from Hardware, and that's exactly what the article is about. So it's literally just like, let's make any sort of doorknobs or hinges or anything. If it's ever gotten painted over instead of taking the hardware off, here's how you can do it. The method, you put it in a crock pot with a little bit of liquid detergent and water, let it sit for a while, and then you can go back through and peel the paint off. And that is it, ladies and
I'm
gentlemen.
now very glad that I know how to do this.
And just a little bit of beeswax furniture polish after you strip the paint off, and you can make it shiny and beautiful again. And that is it.
To be fair, some of the comments on this article are like, "Ooh, very interesting. Short yet simple. Wow, this is a fantastic idea. I would never have thought to use a versatile crock pot.
Yeah.
Wow, what a great idea. This is a pretty good tip to come across." I mean, the comments are really not that deep on this article, to be fair. But there's always an interesting way to go about undoing someone's mistake.
Right. So there you go.
And if you have further inquiries about stripping paint from fiberglass, scroll down on the article.
Yeah.
Well, you still can.
Yeah. So, needless to say, it was an easy read. It was like, okay, now I know how to do something that I may have to do at least once in my lifetime. So there you go. Now you know, peeps.
Another just fun, easy read, but one I personally loved because I hate being terrified, but I also love it.
Great for the season we're in.
Right.
Well, we're coming out of now.
Don't even. It's not
till
Christmas.
Next year.
Not Christmas yet. Best places to scare the crap out of yourself in every state on Thrillist.com by the Thrillist travel team. So it basically just goes through every single state and talks about the most haunted location in that state. And I just love it.
I think this would be a great job, is to tour around the country and checking out some of these locations to give this
absolutely not.
No. I feel like
I'll
this would be an amazing road trip.
Right?
I will pass. Have fun. Don't die.
Road trip around through the continental U.S. seeing all these horror locations.
What got me was that some of them were parks. Some of them were whole parks.
Yeah.
Yep. Scare parks.
I personally just kind of went through and found the states that I have any sort of affiliation with.
Uh-huh.
I just Georgia, my home state, and then Pennsylvania, Connecticut, where I used to live in. And the fact that some of these are hotels that people still stay in, I'm why? Why?
Hey,
why?
You can book
why
and
would
spend
you
the night.
stay there? Why would you stay there?
Some of these, though,
absolutely not.
I love this. In California, Heaven's Gate mass suicide site, where 39 cult members drank poisoned Kool-Aid, really, as the Hale-Bopp comet passed Earth, believing the aliens behind the comet would rapture their souls to heaven.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's so, I don't know. I think the only way that you could get me to go to one of these places is I have to be with a group of people, and I want to be in the center of the group.
You want that human body shield.
Absolutely, I will. Oh God, the asylums, people that go to these asylums. I'm why?
See, I've always been partial to a good spooky hayride. in my own sense. Because something about the tracker puppeting along as you're going through the thing.
I don't know what, something about, I always say this when it has to do with like scary movies, like I will watch some scary movies, but if they have to do with possessions or children, I'm out.
No, possessions
or possessed children.
Double
whammy. Absolutely not.
See,
so then reading this one about the church in Louisiana. Did y'all read that one? That was like the it's a chapel, yellow fever shrine, which is where people died in the epidemic of yellow fever, and artifacts that you can find in the building: children's polio braces, crutches, rows of prosthetic legs, plaster feet, false teeth, and fake eyeballs. No, I will not be going to this church.
Oh, but no one died in his. That's what happened. Like in his parish, no one died there. Like, oh, wait, right? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't care.
No one in his community perished.
But yeah, it's a great article. It's a very entertaining article.
It is.
Oh, the Lizzie Borden house too. I've heard of that one.
Oh yeah. I want to go to that one. The one in Pennsylvania is actually down the street from where my best friend lives.
And in Philly?
Yeah,
Yep.
And they do midnight tours.
No.
Yes.
No.
And interesting thing about like haunted houses and stuff like this is, as working at Michigan Tech, they have a lot of sound design students, so they look for a lot of opportunities. Mm-hmm. One of the opportunities is they create the whole soundscape for the haunted mine tours, which are the abandoned copper mines in Houghton, Michigan. So you've got creepy like school desks and like classrooms in the mine, because that's where they used to teach the workers things. And so like you'll have like these old dilapidated like desks, and like they put a whole soundscape to it and make it this whole experience. And just the natural drippiness, dark lights out. You only have your light with you, but there's speakers and everything pumped throughout, making all these other sounds on top of that. It's incredible.
No.
And it's a great learning opportunity too.
I'll pass. Yep. I'll learn on my own.
I will learn on my own.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us for another podcast of this week's articles. See you again next week.